and AA is working with other partners to implement the DAO project. So we are happy that you are here. We would like to begin our stakeholders meeting in the interest of time so that we can release the good people who have gathered here so that they can go back to their respective institutions. Others that we're expecting will join us in the course of our deliberations. So you are most welcome. On the high table, I would like to introduce the chair of this stakeholders meeting, and then he will take care of the proceedings. Professor Nicholas Nsowanuama is the Vice President of AAU and also the Vice Chancellor or the President of the Regent University of Science and Technology College here in Accra. He has worked at the University of Ghana. He has served as the government statistician and deputy government statistician. He has served as the rector and vice chancellor of the now Kumasi Technical University. He is a demographer, a mathematician, a statistician. So he has a lot of experience in the field. And so it is our pleasure and our privilege to have him to be in our midst and to chair this session. So Professor Nuama, you are most welcome. God bless you. Before I hand over to him, I would like to introduce also the people at the high table. You are all at the high table. Only that their own is a little elevated. Yeah. So on my extreme right is Mr. Patrick Dooney. He is the chair of the Education Sub-Saharan Africa that is actually leading this DAF project. He's also the chair of a number of organizations. He has enormous experience in working in this area in Africa, United Kingdom, and other parts of the world. So he has a lot of industry experience to bring to bear on this important project. Mr. Patrick, you are welcome. Next to him is my boss, Professor Etienne Hille, the Secretary General of AAU. Professor Hille is from Côte d'Ivoire. He's a neuroscientist, neurophysiologist, and he worked briefly as a politician, but he realized that that is not his calling. He was a deputy minister for health, but he realized that it was incompatible with his professional academic calling. So, but he has worked as the vice chancellor of Abobo Jame University in Côte d'Ivoire for almost 10 years, and he has a number of experience in administration and in research. So he is the Secretary General of AAU. Professor Hille, you are welcome. And next to Professor Nuama is the President and the CEO of Population Reference Bureau, Mr. Jeff Jordan. That is an important partner in this DAF project because they have enormous experience in the field of population, data management, data analysis, and communicating data to audiences. So he is here with us because of the importance of this stakeholders meeting. Mr. Jordan, you are welcome. And then the last but not the least is a beautiful lady from the British Council, Ghana. So British Council has been working to improve the well-being of Ghanaians in Ghana and work in various areas and engage in a number of activities. And so they were informed about this important meeting, and they decided to send the manager in charge of alumni relationship, Ms. Irene Dankwa. So Ms. Irene, you are most welcome. So these are the important people that will steer the affairs of this brief meeting we are going to have. On this note, ladies and gentlemen, you are most welcome to our stakeholders meeting, and we hope that we are going to have an interesting and exciting session. Thank you very much. I will now hand over to the chair so that we can continue.
Let me say that instead of mentioning individual, let's see my colleagues at the high table and my colleagues down here also. It's a pleasure meeting again to discuss issues of this importance. In fact, about 3 months or so ago, we met here in the smaller conference room, yes, and discussed this important issue, and that is when it was going to be implemented. And I thought it was going to take a longer time for this thing to be done. And I was surprised when I had noticed that the work had been done. I looked at the document and I saw that I was telling the Executive Secretary, Secretary General, that this document more or less holds every information that you need in tertiary education in Ghana. If you look at it, it has been well researched and well documented. The only thing I was looking at was when you were talking about the Kumasi Technical Institute, and I saw that the date there is not correct. It's in 1994. And I said Kumasi was 1954, so it could be a typo also. But apart from that, you can see that this is a document that we all need to have a good look at, discuss, and then see how this thing can be implemented. And so on that short note, let me say that we are happy you are here, and I'm happy that I've also been made chairman of this function, and I accept to be the chairman, and I officially open the meeting. Thank you very much.
Can you sit here? The person just worked in is the Executive Secretary or the Secretary General, whatever you want to call, of the Committee of Vice Chancellors throughout Ghana. Mr. So, Mr. Peter Kaba. So, where is he? Prof, please, can you come to the high table? Maybe you'll say a few words. Thank you, sir. Sorry about it.
Which university is that?
Prof, sorry. Yeah, Professor Ayum Te is the Vice Chancellor of University of Development Studies, Tamale. He arrived here more earlier than many of us here, but he sat quietly and nobody noticed him. And so the Secretary General, Executive Secretary now thought he was about to come while he has been here 40 minutes behind. Professor, you are welcome, sir. Thank you very much. So he is the chairman of the Committee of Vice Chancellors, Ghana. You are welcome, sir. Okay, so I will now invite, according to the program you have, the AAU Secretary General, Professor Hile, to give us his welcome remarks. Professor Hile.
Thank you, Jonathan. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen of the high table, distinguished vice chancellors, Pro-Vice Chancellors, and other institutional heads here present, colleagues from various African higher education institutions, invited guests, distinguished participants, gentlemen of the press, ladies and gentlemen, all protocol observed. I would like to warmly welcome you all to this important second stakeholders meeting on the demographic of African faculty DAF pilot project in Ghana. The AAU is partnering with NCTE, ISA, and PRB to implement the MasterCard-funded pilot study on the DAF project in Ghana. The first DAF stakeholders meeting was held on Thursday, 8th March 2018, in order to share the intention of the DAF consortium with you, higher education institution leaders in Ghana, and to get your feedback on the proposed project. The useful suggestions and comments from you were used for the development of the draft pilot report, which you now have and which will be presented to you shortly. The purpose of this meeting is again to get your feedback and comment on what the DAF partners have done before the finalization of the DAF project report. Ladies and gentlemen, data is critical for planning and decision making. The ability to make effective decisions is crucial to an institution's survival in today's higher education environment. In order for regulatory agencies, universities, and indeed all tertiary education institutions to evaluate alternatives and make informed choices, they must have reliable and timely data upon which to make their decisions. The DAF project is meant to improve data collection, analysis, and use among the African higher education community, beginning with Ghana. The DAF consortium partners have collected and analyzed data on the numbers of faculty by age, gender, field or department, role and rank, as well as data on student enrollment by subject areas in Ghana. The consortium has developed estimates and projections to describe current and future demand for faculty, as well as describe the policy environment and national context affecting the supply and demand of faculty in Ghana. It is my hope that the ensuing presentations and discussions will enrich the DAF document and make it a reference point for further studies. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, I am convinced that this meeting will provide the platform to share our experiences, discuss and learn from one another, as well as know how the DAF project can benefit the tertiary education institutions in Ghana. On these brief remarks, it is my pleasure, ladies and gentlemen, to welcome you all to the second stakeholders meeting this morning. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Professor Hille. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to invite Mr. Patrick Duni, the chair of ESA, to give us his brief welcome remarks.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. And thank you also to the AAU more broadly for its tremendous work in this project and also its terrific Ghanaian hospitality. This morning it's such a joy. You don't get a greeting like you get a greeting in Accra in London typically in the morning. Your wonderful woman on reception was just going, "Yay, going to be a good day." It was just fantastic. How many of you were here at the first stakeholder meeting? Not many. I was. So it may be worth reiterating why we've done this and how this study happened. Perhaps I'll stand in the middle so you can see. The idea for this came from a conference of infrastructure investors and a conference of builders. And at this conference, I was sitting there. I've been very interested in many things to do with Education Africa. My background is in industry, academia, and as an investor. And these investors were saying, there's a bonanza about to happen. And this bonanza is 500 new universities across Africa. Existing universities going to grow like crazy. We're going to be really rich because we'll be able to invest, we'll be able to build. This is going to be fantastic. And I was sitting there, and I when it came to the questions, I said, do you mind if I ask a question? I'm not a builder and I'm not an infrastructure investor, but can I ask a question? And the guy said, yeah, of course you can ask a question. And the question I asked was, well, where will the faculty come from? And he said, well, that's not our job. That's the job of governments. That's the job of the universities. So I said, so you're asking people to invest in your funds to build all these buildings, but your biggest risk possibly you don't actually care about. Why would I invest in your fund? And that got me thinking, actually, what is the demand for faculty? And not just what is the demand for faculty as one big number, but how do you actually understand that demand for different topics, for gender, which is really important, and for different places. So that was the germ that led to this study. Of course, one individual with an idea isn't enough. You need partners, you need strong partners, and that's why we have assembled the partnership that we have today. This project, which ESSA is delighted to be involved in, is one of 3 big projects at the moment that we have underway. The first one, actually, we launched a few weeks ago, and this was to solve another frustration I had, which was that it was very difficult to find research done by Africans on education in Africa. It was very easy to find research done by Cambridge, Harvard, these kind of guys, but very difficult to find stuff that was done on the ground by Africans. So what ESSA has done is produced the first free, open, searchable database of education done by Africans. So many of your education departments will be in there, and that is on the ESSA website. It has over 2,000 pieces of research. This is already highlighting the gaps in research. There's actually very little research on out of school, for example. And that is in common with the demographics of faculty in the sense that often the best research, of course it answers some questions, the questions that you sought to answer in undertaking the research, but the best research I've ever been involved in also raises more questions. And I think, as you'll see today, especially in Marlene's fascinating presentation about what some of the things behind the numbers, I think it will beg you to answer more questions, and we'd love to get your input on some of those issues. The third project that we're involved in is connected to this one, and this is around scholarships. Many people are assuming that the growth in enrollments will be matched by a growth in scholarship funding available. I think that's optimistic. I think also that much scholarship funding is not efficient, is not as effective as it could be. So what we're doing is looking at the characteristics of the most effective scholarship models to try and pull out, if you were setting up a scholarship model, this is the best way to do it. This is the most efficient way to do it. So I hope we have a really fascinating discussion. I'm sure we will have, given the discussion we had at the last meeting. And I'd like to thank again the AAU for hosting this event and for taking part so thoroughly in the work. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Patrick. We'd like to invite Mr. Jeff Jordan, the CEO of Population Reference Bureau and the President of Population Reference Bureau, to give us his welcome remarks.
Thank you. I will say up front that as an American, we are not particularly good on protocol. I would love to, again, it is quite an honor and a privilege to be here among a crowd as distinguished, whether you are here as host, as guest, as the media, or whoever is here joining this, because I believe that what has been done by this team has great implications for the future not only of Ghana, but as you'll understand from my perspective, a global future that matters. I also want to particularly acknowledge the AAU and our hosts here for hosting this meeting and for hosting this work. It's been an honor to join Patrick and Issa in this project to understand and elucidate the demographics of African faculty. The hope is that this will be a continental-wide effort. But we were particularly happy to work in collaboration with the National Council of Tertiary Education here in Ghana, to use Ghana as the pilot and to look at where, because that will teach us so much about, again, what we understand, what we don't understand, and where and how that not only impacts Ghana, but how we might look at this work in other countries. PRB itself is next year will be our 90th anniversary. We have been in existence in the U.S., really working to understand and bridge sound research and data on demographics as related social science to policy and programmatic worlds. I wish I could say that more demographic data was in use in ways that make a difference to policy than is. And we have always felt that it is a part of our role in working in partnership around the globe to see that that information is brought to play. And again, you will recognize that as we go through this morning. This work is particularly interesting given the context both globally and in country of SDG 4. As you all know, that really looks at quality education, and 4.3 within that specifically focuses on technical, vocational, tertiary, and adult education. And you could easily argue that everything that happens within not only the education sector, but within every sector of work that we undertake, within the social sciences, within the sciences, really depends on this sector and really depends on 4.3. Because where and how we educate our adults who lead this work and who teach the rest and who move us forward in research is critical. You can't do the rest of it without adequately addressing what is happening within the sector. So I believe that it's foundational to all of the work within the SDGs and what we are seeking to achieve globally. And as I said to colleagues here before, for me in particular, and for my children, it's easy for me to say from a perch in Washington, D.C., the importance of African populations to the global future is paramount, because as we all know, if you follow the demographics, any growth in the future labor supply globally is coming from Africa. So if we don't address where and how the population in Africa achieves what it can achieve and what will happen within that, if we don't address it here, that impacts not just those individuals here, that impacts not only this country, but that impacts the globe. So I'm very excited for our partnership here. And the last thing is, I really shouldn't be up here talking. I want to acknowledge both my colleague, Dr. Marlene Lee. We believe in partnership, and I just want to let you know that just because she is wearing the colors of the AAU, I'm not offering her to the AAU, okay? I mean, partnership, yes, and to work together, absolutely, but she's coming back to Washington to work after this is over. But both Dr. Lee and Professor Mba and their teams in terms of what they will present today is both fascinating. I've been able to see and work with them on it. And I think we are so looking forward to your thoughts about where this is, what it says, what's missing, and what else we can do to look at the policy impacts of this work. So again, thank you to our hosts, thank you to our partners, and thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Jeff Jordan. Yeah, so just to introduce the lady, the beautiful lady on my right, Dr. Marlene Lee. She is a senior program director at the Population Reference Bureau, and she is the person responsible for the data analysis and, trying to bring out the meat out of this project, as it were. So she'll be making the presentation on the projections in terms of looking ahead for faculty demand in Ghana. The president or the president of Regional University, who also doubles as the vice president of AAU, has spoken. He will make another speech that will formally kickstart our work. But before he does that, he would like to know who he's addressing. He knows some of you, but he doesn't know everybody here. So we want to briefly introduce ourselves, our names, our institutional affiliation, and our position at the place where we are working, so that we'll be able to understand who is who at this meeting. So I've already introduced myself. I want to move from the right, then we move and go around the table. So I work at the AAU as the Director of Research and Academic Planning. Jonathan Umba is my name. Marlene?
Marlene Lee, Population Reference Bureau.
Anthony Jijonu, NCTE.
Notumo Dlamini, Association of African Universities, ICT, Communications and Knowledge Management.
Morning, I'm Raghav Lal with Lancaster University in Ghana.
Koku Dankwa, Kalik Institute of Business and Technology.
Kwalade Kujo Francis, Norfolk University College.
Helen Nana Mensah, Dominion University College, representing the Vice President, Alice Lamte.
Osei Dakwa with African Virtual Campus.
Edmond Ameko, Accra Technical University.
James Yamoa, Ghana Christian University College.
Suleimana Al-Hassan, Dean, Planning and Quality Assurance Unit of the University of Mines and Technology, representing my Vice Chancellor.
Mary Sasa, Blue Crest College, representing the Rector.
Collins Sadu Bempa Brobe, representing the Actor Rector, Ghana Institute of Journalism.
Siwa Kwamensa, African University College of Communications, representing myself.
I'm Dr. Nete, Marshall's College, Meridian Pre-University. I'm the founder of both and group president. Thank you.
Victor Dogwe from Nabita College, representing the president.
Dr. Hila Ado, Lucas College, representing the president. Thank you.
My name is Professor Abdullahi Ribadu, Vice Chancellor Sule Lamido University in Nigeria, and I'm also the Secretary General of Association of West African Universities. I am coming under that platform. I arrived last night at 1:30 a.m. because the our flight from Abuja, just at takeoff, one of the engines knocked off. There was no power. So we had to now take Aero, because I said from Abuja I will not come to Lagos to take a flight to Ghana when there is a flight direct to Accra. So, but eventually we had to come to Lagos at 9 p.m. and we reached here eventually at 12:30, and I reached my hotel at 1:30 a.m. Thank you.
We are sorry for the situation. Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I'm not taking your chair, but because he's my neighbor, so I want to share his grief. I'm Dr. Robert Newman, Head of Research and Consultancy, Regional Maritime University, representing the Vice Chancellor.
Ebo Bonze Simpson, Rector, Gempa.
I'm Clement Jidonu, Accra Institute of Technology.
Mamadou Lamine Jeju, Wisconsin International University, representing the Vice Chancellor. I am the Dean of the Business School, statistician by training.
Professor Goski Alabi, President of the Lawa Open University College. And Lawa Open University College is the first accredited open university in Ghana and the second in West Africa. And we are very happy to be here because it's very pertinent to SDG 4 and particularly 4.3. Thank you very much.
Peter Kaba is the Executive Secretary of Vice Chancellor's Ghana, and I'm here supporting my Vice Chancellor and my Rector of GIMPA as the three in command here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, sorry, those behind, I thought there's a mic there. Oh, okay.
Mercy Bensiencho, Ghana Institute of Languages.
I'm Egbe Moses, Presbyterian University College, representing the President.
Thank you very much.
So, on the note of the presentations that have been made, and then the introduction of our good people here, I officially declare this meeting open. Thank you.
Okay. Very much. So what we are going to do, the report or what we have done is divided into two sections. The first is about a review of the Ghana higher education policy environment. That actually gives the input for the next component of our work, and that is projection of or future estimation of the faculty situation in Ghana. So that provides the statistics that we need, the input that we need for the analysis. So two broad presentations. One is on the review of the policy situation in Ghana, and the other one is the faculty demands in Ghana as we look forward. So next slide, please. So my brief presentation will cover what we have done in terms of the purpose of the study, the activities that we have undertaken, and then the results that we found in terms of the research that we have done. Next slide. So African Union developed the Continental Agenda 2063 in 2013 with a view to presenting what it entails to do, its vision for the next 50 years. It's an ambitious project hoping to build a prosperous and united Africa based on shared values and common destiny. And that plan is predicated on a number of key issues. One of them is that by the year 2063, the young people transiting from secondary education to tertiary education should be 70%. Currently, it is 7%. And then, by that time also, 70% of all those who are graduating from secondary, from tertiary education are young people who have gone through science and technology. In other words, 70% of our graduates must be in science and technology disciplinary fields. Okay, so we find it very ambitious, but we hope if we're able to move fast, we'll be able to achieve it, because that holds the key to our developmental aspirations. So, as Patrick mentioned, we are actually trying to contribute to the realization of this agenda by providing the vital information that is needed for planning. So our project is about improving data collection, data management, data utilization, and data dissemination. So this project was born out of the fact that many young people are coming up from secondary education and they are moving to university and other tertiary level institutions. Okay, so day by day, year by year, the number is increasing. Massive number of people are moving. And then the people who are supposed to teach them, educate them, and train them are in short supply. So what do we do? What can we do? So with this situation, how will the future look like if current policy environment continues into the future? So that is essentially what has informed this study. Next slide. So we expect that our action will help our stakeholders, universities in Ghana, be able to plan for faculty recruitment, faculty retention. Also, we expect that stakeholders will be able to collaborate in data management and data utilization. Next slide. So what have we done? What we have done is to collect information on the demographics of the faculty in Ghana. What is the demographic situation in Ghana in terms of numbers? How many professors, assistant professors, lecturers do we have? And what is their demographic characteristics, so on. And then what is student enrollment situation in Ghana? What have been the trend? Because these are the input that we need for us to look into the future. So that is what we have done. We try to describe the current policy environment in Ghana, and they use the information we have gathered to look into the future. So the partners are what you find here. National Council for Tertiary Education is the national regulatory agency in Ghana responsible for tertiary education institutions in Ghana. So they provided the key data that we need for this study. And so our executive secretary of this organization is having another meeting. When he finishes, he will join us. But he's represented here by the specialists who we are working with, who actually generated the data that we need, Mr. Tony. So Education Sub-Saharan Africa is the lead implementing partner. Education Sub-Saharan Africa seeks, as Patrick had mentioned, seeks to transform educational outcomes. And they do this by informing and inspiring investment in education in Sub-Saharan Africa. So AAU, our work covers the whole of African higher education landscape. And we set the intellectual agenda, and we do this by providing a platform where higher education stakeholders come together to deliberate on key issues affecting higher education. And so we work so with Population Reference Bureau and ESA to implement this project. Population Reference Bureau, as I mentioned to you earlier on, they seek to improve the welfare, the well-being of people everywhere in the world. And they do this by promoting informed decisions on key areas of population, health, and environment. You see, anybody that is a statistician or demographer knows that this is a household name because they have the expertise in huge data management and dissemination. So as he mentioned to you, they have been around for so many years. Okay, this project is being funded by MasterCard Foundation. Unfortunately, the lady that is responsible for this project just left, visited Ghana very recently, and she had to go back to Toronto. So on that score, she's not able to come and join us, but she's hoping to get the feedback from you. So what is the higher education environment situation in Ghana? Like any other country in Africa, we have noticed massive increase, not only in private provision of higher education, but also public provision of higher education. When I came to Ghana about 15, 20 years back, there were only 3 public universities. But now we have 10, you see, 10 public universities, and you have 81 private university colleges. Altogether, you have 213, you see, tertiary education institutions that are accredited by the National Accreditation Board. Next slide. So these are the various higher education institutions that you find in Ghana that have been accredited by the National Accreditation Board, 213 of them. Okay, so the government of Ghana has a policy in student enrollment. So they state that if for every 10 young men that enter university or any tertiary education institution, there should be an accompanying 10 women also. In other words, 50-50. If 5 people are women, there must be 5 men. If there are 10 girls that are, 10 boys that are in the University of Ghana, there should be also 10 girls. But we shall see whether we are maintaining this norm. Okay. So also, in terms of disciplinary distribution, for sciences, if 2 people are enrolled in social sciences and humanities, there should be, accompanying 3 people enrolled in sciences. In other words, 3-2 or 6-10, 6-4. So there should be more people enrolled in science-based programs than humanities. But this is the norm or the expectation of the policy statement of the government of Ghana. But are we maintaining it? Also, there is you have the student-teacher ratio, or the number of students that should be in a classroom at a point in time being taught by a particular faculty. Okay, so as you can see, the subject categories and the student-teacher ratio or the student-faculty ratio on your right. Okay, so before the panel, you see the humanities and social sciences, and below it, you see the sciences. That is the expectation or the policy statement of the government. So this is important as we analyze the current statistics from our universities and other tertiary education institutions. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, so there is also the distribution in terms of a faculty. So if you have 100 academic staff, 10 of them should be full professors, 15 of them should be associate professors, 35 of them will be senior lecturers, and then 40 of them should be lecturers, making 100. So this is what government wants for all our universities to follow. Next slide. Okay, now, we see whether we are following all these norms or not. So we try to analyze current information to provide impetus for our future analysis. So for 3 years, from 2015 to 2017, we tried to look at the enrollment in tertiary education institutions in Ghana. So as you can see from the slide, public universities consistently witnessed high enrollment, but it is not the same when you look at private tertiary education institutions and other tertiary education institutions. Well, if we control for the number of institutions that responded to the questionnaire, because NCTE sends out questionnaire to institutions to complete and return. If we say that all the institutions did respond, submit their returns to NCTE, then what we are seeing on the board is a demonstration of maybe the lack of interest on the part of those who assess higher education in Ghana. Next slide. But the overall picture shows that there is an annual growth rate of 2%. In other words, there is that increase over time. Okay, in terms of program, you see that this is the distribution that we were able to find over a 3-year period. A number of, many of them are enrolled in undergraduate programs. And it's very interesting that PhD also training is increasing. We all know many of the universities now want faculty to have a PhD before they can become a lecturer in their university. So enrollment is also increasing. Next slide. Okay, so in terms of disciplinary fields at the public universities, you can see the enrollment pattern over time. So we try to see whether the norm, the NCTE norm, is being followed in terms of science versus humanities and social sciences. As we saw earlier on, the sciences should be 60, while the humanities and social sciences should be 40. But the converse is what we are seeing here. The humanities and social sciences are 60, while the sciences are 40. So there is some work to be done in terms of balancing the ratio for the disciplines. Okay, so we also try to look at the enrollment by gender and also by program or disciplinary fields. And then as you can see, in all the degree programs, there are overwhelming more males than females, all of them. Any discipline you look at, there are more males than females. Some of them are traditional male-dominated disciplines, but there are other areas also. So we see that there is work to be done in terms of upscaling or balancing the gender gap. Next slide. Okay, so we look at full-time faculty employment in our education institutions over this 3-year period. And as you can see, there has been consistent increase in the first four institutions, while the last 5 have been witnessing negative growth rates. Okay, so we see also that the student-teacher ratio, the number of students being taught by faculty at any point in time, for all the institutions concerned, none of them conforms to the NCTE norm. The policy is not followed. That heightens the issue of faculty deficit because we have more students per lecturer, indicating that we have fewer lecturers around. Okay, next slide. Okay, so we try to look at employment in public universities according to the rank, and then look at the distribution over time. So if you look at 2016 and 17, just the second to the last column, and then we try to take the proportion of various categories of faculty. You see that instead of having 10 out of 100 or 10%, we have 3 for full-time faculty. Instead of having 15 for associate professors, we're having 10. We're having 7. And for senior lecturers, we're supposed to have 35, but we have 27. And for lecturers, we're supposed to have 40. We have 44, and so on. So in all categories, none of the norms are being observed or complied with. Okay, so we now look at the age distribution of the faculty that we have in public universities. As you can see, under 30 up to 60 plus. What is interesting, or what is important for us here is that young faculty is, the proportion of young faculty is actually appreciated, or should I say, is good, because more than 30% of the faculty are below 40 years, okay, which is a good thing. It means they have more time to teach, to supervise students, and to do research. Okay. Now, there are some information that the data from NCTE could not give us. And so we decided to interview selected vice chancellors or their representatives in order to give us additional information to enrich our work and to help us to get the information that we didn't have from the secondary data from NCTE. And so we interviewed 7 representatives of 7 institutions. Some of them are here. And so, as you can see, the institutions displayed on the screen. Okay, so what did we ask them? The questionnaire we used for the interview is actually appended in the report that you have. But in summary, we asked them about succession planning. We asked them about retention and retirement. Okay, some of these institutions say that they have this structured succession planning that enables them to recruit, retain, and retire their faculty. Also, on retention, some of them say that they identify some of their graduating students that are very good, and they try to encourage them and eventually absorb them as their faculty. On retirement, they all say that they comply with the government of Ghana policy on mandatory 60 years retirement, whereby after 60 years, the Social Security payment for the faculty ceases. But then they continue to teach for the next 10 years before they now exit the scene. But we all know that even when they retire, they are very active in private institutions, moonlighting here and there. Okay. So we also asked about academic mobility, what attracted them to that particular institution, or what made them to leave the institution. Okay, so they said that they supported the movement of faculty from one institution to the other for purposes of teaching, collaborative research, and supervision of students. And then what is the motivation for coming to this institution? What has attracted you to come to our university, and so on? So you can see some of the reasons that they gave. Good remuneration, say opportunity for faculty development and infrastructure, and so on. And then why did the students leave? Why did the faculty leave? For students, a number of factors, including poor performance, lack of financial means to continue education, and so on. Okay, for faculty, professional development, and low remuneration. So those are the things we got from the interview that we were able to sample from these 7 institutions to enrich the report that you now have. So we hope that you'll be able to give us important feedback that will help us to revise and finalize the report as we move forward. So we are happy that Ghana has the infrastructure that we need to do this project. And we hope that this project will be upscaled to other countries or replicated to other countries in Africa that have similar tertiary education infrastructure like we have in Ghana. So this is where I would like to end my presentation. And Mr. Chair, I think we can take questions before we break, but the real presentation is coming, where we look into the future in terms of how will the faculty situation be in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years, in the next 20 years, based on this information that I've just given to you. Thank you very much.
Questions invited, but I have, maybe I don't know whether it's a question or not. Where you were listing the programs, the programs or what? You said certificate, diploma. No, is it the program where you have the diploma, the degree, the this and that, and then you put certificate, and yeah, but certificate is not a tertiary program. So I don't think that it has a place here, because if a university is doing its own non-tertiary program, when you go to say Kumasi Technical University, we have a lot of diploma programs, a lot of certificate programs, which are not tertiary. So you don't bring them here. That's why you have just few of them here. My second issue is the trend analysis of the ranks. You know, the policy has some percentages, 10, 15, 30, 35, and 40. That's the policy. When you were doing the analysis, you have introduced another one, assistant lecturer tutors. So once you introduce that one and you calculate the percentages, you won't get the right one. Because you think that, oh, it's only 3% professors. But you have introduced other ones which have also taken, the base, part of the base. So I think if you want to compare, then remove those ones you have introduced and see whether if you are dealing with those categories, you get the percentages closer to the norm.
Okay. Any more? Any more comments?
Thank you very much. I would like to congratulate the team for a very good work done, particularly considering the fact that we had it's about 3 months since the project was started. And as my senior colleague rightly said, one would wonder, if that would have been possible with our traditional way of conducting research in Ghana. But it's been proven that yes, it's possible, and we congratulate you for that. I would like to touch on the point made by my senior colleague before I go to the substantive points I would like to make. It has to do with the percentages that we saw and the introduction of assistant lectureship, which I feel reflects the current practice. And so to join assistant lectureship to the lectureship position, in my opinion, would not reflect the true situation on the ground, because that in itself presents us with a number of issues that might need to be interrogated. Now to the substantive point that I would want to make. I saw the figures for PhD. Yeah. And I was wondering whether these are PhD enrollments in universities in Ghana or PhD enrollments in Ghana, because that has some relationship with transnational education, TNE, because we have quite a number of people who want to do PhDs and they still do not want to leave their jobs. So what we find is that it's either an institution that is either represented in Ghana, recruiting students for PhD programs, or an offshore institution recruiting students for PhD programs. So a purely distance education mode is involved in this case. And so we are likely to find that the actual number of PhD enrollments in Ghana may be different from what we have at the moment. So I would like a bit of clarification on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me also add my voice. I think we need to congratulate all the stakeholders in this project because data is very important. I just want to tell you, only a few weeks ago, the National Universities Commission in Nigeria commissioned a directory of full professors in Nigerian universities. The thinking was we are about 9,000. But when we were told, go online, register, and your vice chancellor will authenticate, the numbers dropped to close to maybe 7,000, although some people voluntarily probably did not enroll, but there were duplications. You find a professor from ABU on sabbatical at University of Lagos or Port Harcourt or Sokoto, counted in ABU, counted in Sokoto or Maiduguri. So now we are beginning to get authentic, correct data. So I'm really excited about the data I've seen here. And by and large, you can see that we are literally the same in terms of the informations. I was just looking at the staff mix by rank that we are talking about. The policy says 25 in the professorial rank, professors 10, 15% associate professors, then 35 senior lecturers, and then 40. Why I have issue is the issue of the assistant lecturer. Whether you call it assistant lecturer, in Nigeria we say assistant lecturers teach, but they must have masters. These are assistant lecturers. But graduate assistants, these are graduates who are fresh, who do not have master's degree. They are not counted. But those who have masters are counted. So the NUC ratio, staff mix for accreditation is professorial rank 20%. You have 25%. That is both professors and associate professors are lumped together as professorial rank. Senior lecturers 35%. Then lecturer 1 and below, which means lecturer 1, lecturer 2, and assistant lecturer. These ones account for 45%, while you have 40%, but without the assistant lecturer, which may be graduate assistant, I wouldn't know. But I need clarification there. But my question is, masters is like a prerequisite to the PhD. And the trend I see is that there is like a decline. What could be responsible for that, and how would you prop up? Because I can see in the 2016-17 session, only 7,000 is it and 51, while it was 7,118 also in 2014-15. So it means to recruit more candidates for PhDs would be lacking, and if your goal is to have more PhDs trained, then you also have to increase the base for the masters. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next. Okay, come. I'll be the last before we go for tea break.
Thank you for the ability to raise a question. I actually wanted to raise, I've had the benefit of seeing a lot of the data, and there's one data point that I think I didn't want to be lost in what was going on. It's less to do with the numbers of faculty and more to do with how the sector in Ghana has grown in terms of enrollment. And the figures that I saw were in 1987, there were 9,000 students in tertiary education in Ghana. By 2010, that had increased to 150,000, plus or minus. Today, by 2017, at the end of this data, that number was over 350,000 students. So what I don't want to be lost is that there was a point made that in the last 3 years, about a 2.8% increase in enrollment. Those figures are probably understated based on who's reporting. But when you look at the overall trend of, and it's phenomenal, it's absolutely phenomenal to see what Ghana has done in terms of increasing the numbers of enrollment in tertiary education. But think about that, to go from 9,000 in 1987 to 150 plus thousand in 2010, to 7 years later, over 350,000. You have a tidal wave of students coming at you. So I don't want that point to be lost as we talk about distributions and other kinds of things. All of those are very important points, but I don't want to lose the bigger issue of the wave that is so impressive of what's going on here and how that's reacted to.
Thank you very much. I think I will try to respond to the issues. We have taken note of your comments. That is why we have invited you here. You know the environment and the terrain, and your expertise and your comments and suggestions are very, very useful to us. So concerning the certificate, yeah, there is a structured format that NCTE uses. And from time to time, they try to hold capacity building workshops for university staff responsible for supplying information to NCTE. So they are the people that give this information. So there are people who are registered for certificate programs at the universities, others registered for diploma, and so on. So, but if in the current realities, the certificate programs should be erased, I think NCTE should be able to take note of that, and then it should not be reflected in their database also. Yeah, you are right to say that the proportion or the distribution is affected by the last two categories, assistant lecturers and the tutors that we have introduced. Again, it's the information we have gotten from NCTA. What can be done is that we can now, if you eliminate those particular categories, then we focus and see whether the norm is being followed or not. But just to say that we do not have the norm for assistant lectureship and tutorial work. Okay, but increasingly many institutions are phasing out tutorial rank, especially the public universities. You see, at the University of Ghana, for example, a tutor currently now is somebody responsible for administrative issues to halls, Akwafo Hall tutor, Mensa Saba Hall tutor, and so on and so forth. Purely responsible for administrative work. But I do not know whether this policy direction will be revised by NCTE very soon. I don't know. But what you find here is actually information we captured from the database of NCTE. So I think what Professor Norma is saying is a matter for NCTE and the stakeholders to take care of. Yeah, PhD enrollment that we have taken note of. So we say that there are factors that affect the data that you see there. One of those factors is the information supplied by the institutions. If in a particular year, particular institutions fail to give us information, it will be reflected. But if we control for that and ensure that those that did not give information are negligible, then the situation you find here may be attributed to factors related to maybe lack of funds to continue, or some other related factors. Yeah, double counting is true. People, we know, some faculty that are full-time in public universities in Ghana are also faculty in private universities. So we don't know to what extent they are captured as full-time, but we know they teach they teach in private universities are part-time lecturers. But for purposes of accreditation, when NAB comes around, they want to present a picture that shows that they have full-time faculty. Whereas in actual fact, they are part-time lecturers who are full-time employees elsewhere. And so the issue of double counting may be there, especially when they are moonlighting to other private universities. But how to handle that? Maybe online registration like it is done in Nigeria. Okay, so decline in master's registration is a good observation. Increasingly, public universities in Ghana demand PhD before you can become a lecturer. And so, and you have to do MPhil by research before you can also move to PhD programs. So the decline we noticed there, maybe as we said earlier on, the year in question where you have noticed that fluctuation may be due to the information given by the institutions. So we go back to the data, look at the data more closely to see whether all the institutions did supply the information in these particular years, because it makes a difference. If particular institutions fail to submit information, so analysis is based on those who have submitted information. So it affects the value you find there. So we'll go back and see, look at the data again and interrogate it more closely. But NCT is here, the people that gave us the data, and I would like Mr. Tony to say a few words on that.
I believe you said virtually everything. I believe Prof has basically explained some of the things. Maybe for the faculty calculations, there might have been an oversight. So we'll look at it and then correct some of the little things that have been raised. And we've taken note of all the suggestions that have come as well, and we would work on it in the subsequent document. Thank you.
Should there be any reason responsible for that? Because I can remember your people came to my office directly and I sent someone to them to do this particular work, but I didn't see Regional Maritime University being reflected as part of the institution where data were collected.
Did we reflect any institution? Yeah, we lumped all the, so Maritime University is captured though. Only that way. There are 213 of you. If we list only you, others will complain.
I have a quick comment, Prof, on your approach. When you say refer to NCTE, I guess when NCT collected the data, they had a purpose. Their purpose may be different from yours. So what matters, you use their information based on the purpose you are responding. So that will override every oversight or approaches. That's, I think, it's where we should focus. Now, the other comment, when you think of PhD enrollment, it depends on the questions. If 15 you ask me how many students are in your program, I will count the same the following year. Because when you come this year, I am a student A, I'm still there. You are putting me there to our accounting. So the numbers doesn't mean here, unless the question is clear. If you have been counted once, I don't count you the next time if you are still in the process. Because when you come, year one, I have one candidate. The year one, I count the one, but it's still the same person. So you should look at what you are really counting when you go in the PhD enrollment. Now, the other component, probably you refer to the university. They have done what you call the staff ratio. And the staff ratio should involve the full-time and the part-time. When you consider the part-time, you have 3 part-time for 1 full-time, at least according to the NAB regular requirement. So when you do, I don't know if you do the staff ratio or the university provide that one, because it's why I want to clarify who did the staff ratio calculations, because what you show here seems to me higher. Now, the other component I have is on the ratio, the gender issue. I think the gender issue should not be addressed at the tertiary level. It should be something earlier, because to have people who are ready to go, you should have to give a chance to boys and female to reach that level for you to be able to say 50-50, to reach that one in reality. What I want to say is, when you say 50-50 at the university acceptance, have you prepared people, give chance to all the girls and boys to go through the system before you start selecting? Because when you put it this one, either way, be it boys or female, are you considering quality when you say just take 50-50? Because you don't give a chance to all to reach that level. So I have a concern if they say 50-50.
Thank you. I think a woman is sitting beside you, so she wants to defend the women. But just to say that, you see, it's a good thing to do. It's a good thing to do. If you look at the population profile of Ghana, there are more females than males. So if they have equal opportunities, equal educational opportunities, then the ideal situation will be more females than males. Yeah. But a number of factors make it impossible for that to be achieved. Okay, a number of things. Some of them are cultural, some of them are financial, some of them are other factors. Okay, so but just to say that this is a national issue that should be addressed at that level. Yes. So what you are saying is correct regarding the data. Okay. So, and that is why we say we are analyzing secondary data. But the information that we have there actually helps our case. That is why we have to go to NCT, because the input that we need for our projection can be got from the secondary data from NCT. We agree with the fact that, data are collected for specific purposes. We know and we agree with that. And that is also why we have to do additional data collection in order to enrich our report, because the NCT data could not address all the issues that we wanted to interrogate. So thank you very much. He is speaking as a statistician. Yeah. You are the person preventing yourself for tea break. Oh. We are ready to continue. But if you want, Marlene. Okay. Okay, so women first. So women will have their day, then we break. Okay.
Yeah, that's
okay. Irene, go on.
So this is just a contribution on the PhD. Okay. So British Council and the German Exchange, so we conducted a research on PhD capacity in Ghana. Okay. And to kind of contribute or answer the question I raised, what we realized was that the PhD, those who enroll to do PhD take longer than expected. So, for instance, if you're supposed to finish PhD in 4 years, they are finishing it in 6 years or in 8 years. So that could account to the reason why the numbers are not reflecting. And also the dropout rate was very high, as from like 5% to 50%. So those who even enroll on the PhD program are also dropping out. So I'm going to talk about it later on in the afternoon, but I thought it would be good if I put this out to explain the reason why we are seeing some of these figures. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you. Dominion University.
Please, in your statement, the last bit, something struck me. You said we have the infrastructure to go along with this. Could you be a bit clear on that for me?
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, what? Sorry. Ladies, there's ladies. Okay.
Prof was going to answer that. Thank you very much. But just to add to the British Council, that I was the lead researcher that participated in the PhD capacity research here in Ghana. So I'm very much happy that you'll be presenting it today. But also in respect of the data issue, what we are saying is secondary data. I want to know from NCTE whether they have a way of isolating or segregating the full-time from the part-time, because if not, we would be doing double counting. And therefore, that may undermine the ability to plan, to project and plan appropriately. So it's something we need to take into consideration. But the second point I want to make has to do with, again, the numbers we are seeing and the assistant lectureship, because it is a policy issue which I hope that this research may discuss in their report. What we find is that the requirement by the National Accreditation Board based on NCTE norms is that we require MPhil to teach in Ghana, or a research master's that is based on a 1 year, a master's with a 1 year research component, not a PhD to teach in Ghana or to work in a tertiary institution as an academic. However, the fair wages requires that to be an academic, you should have a doctorate. So the managers of the universities are compelled to say, if you do not have a doctorate, we cannot employ you to teach in the university. And therefore, for those who are already in the system and have masters, they are forced to run and look for a PhD, however possible. What that meant was that for those with the research masters who were coming in and they needed to teach at all costs, needed to be redesignated as assistant lecturers. Then when they get their doctorate, they now become lecturers. So this is something that I believe we really would have to interrogate very well, because it has implications for the very objective of this study. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The last intervention, Professor. Okay.
I just want to follow up on that.
Okay.
I was fully involved in the fair wages negotiations, because I was representing the polytechnics on that. And I know why that situation arose. You know, the universities, they were determining salary structure for a lecturer. And the universities and the polytechnics, we were trying to put a qualification that will enable fair wages to determine that. And the public university said a lecturer should have a PhD. In other words, if you want to assess our lecturer and see where to put our lecturer's salary, our lecturer should be a PhD holder. So it's the universities which submitted that. And based on that, fair wages put the lecturer at the university, public university, at that. And then the others decided, okay, for us, MPhil, for National Accreditation Board, they don't have anything to do with salary and so forth. For them, they are saying that you qualify to teach with your MPhil. But if you want to raise the bar, it's like secondary school, or even the university, we qualify to enter university. But the University of Ghana would tell you that, or a faculty or department will tell you that, oh, for our faculty or department, the CCCC doesn't allow you to enter. You need to be that. So once you fix it, then you follow it. So here I'm saying that it's the universities themselves which put that rank.
Thank you very much. Professor Ayo, the last.
Thank you. A comment on the data. I'm looking at the table on page 36, where KNUST have only one staff who is above 60 as a full-time. And I doubt that seriously. Where Legon is having 159. UCC is only 4 and UDS is 13. These old universities have a lot of professors there who are full-timers. on contract. We are even, yes, so please look at that data critically. Page
Thank you.
36. And then there,
page
36.
Yeah, so
on the same page,
distribution.
on the same page, you see that we have 9 universities listed there. Although the data says we have 10 public universities, because we have 1 university which is not having students at the moment. University for Eastern Region, or what you call. Pardon? Yes, it's counted as a public university, but it's not having any students. So practically we have 9 public universities having students. But there's a 10th one on paper, but not on the ground yet. Yeah, okay. I just want to make this clarification. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. I think, shall I respond? Okay, so let me start with the last one. Yes, again, the information you find here is the information that was generated from NCT database. And it benefited from the data supplied by the institutions themselves. So if the institution supplied information, we capture it. If the institution did not supply information, we don't capture it. If the institution supply incomplete information, we work with incomplete information. So yeah, we take note of your observation. We go back and see what our database said. If it is still the same, there's nothing we can do unless the institution gives us additional information on that particular data set. So the information we find is actually what was captured on the database, deriving from data from the institutions. So thank you, Prof. We'll look at it again. Concerning the infrastructure from a Dominion University representative, what we are saying is that data from NCTE, okay, follows the structured data requirement by UNESCO. Is it UNESCO or UNICEF? UNESCO, very good. So there is a UNESCO format that is given to various countries, and they follow that to supply information to UNESCO every year. So that database is there. So there are countries that are accumulating such information over time. That is important for what we are doing. So Ghana has that system, but other countries also have. But I cannot say that all the 54 countries in Africa have. No. You know, because of war, civil war, and so on, many systems and databases have been destroyed and rendered useless. Okay? So for such countries, they don't have the infrastructure that will enable us to do this analysis. Okay, but those that do have, we will replicate what we have done in Ghana for those countries. That's the point I was making. Thank you. Okay, so I would like to plead that we break here so that the hot tea doesn't become cold tea. So we quickly go down for our group picture so that we capture this particular stakeholders meeting for posterity. And then we come up to refresh ourselves for 20 minutes. And then we come back for the representation on faculty demand in Ghana. Thank you very much. We enjoyed your interventions and your comments. We can assure you that we shall take all of them on board as we revise the document and get it ready for final production. Thank you. So we want to go down the staircase at the entrance to this building to have a group picture. After that, we come up and have our tea and snacks, and then we continue. 20 minutes. Thank you very much.